Hello, I'm Harold Munro, Editor-in-Chief at the Vancouver Sun, joined by Katie DeRosa, our legislative reporter in Victoria. Hi, Katie.
Morning, Harold. Coming to you on the first day of the fall legislative session. So lots happening, lots to talk about.
Yeah, it's back this week, and there's plenty for the opposition parties to press the government on, from housing affordability to healthcare shortages and the opioid and mental health crises. But is there going to be enough time for debate with the speaker bringing in some new rules? What does that look like, Katie?
Yeah, so late Friday, the speaker announced 45-second time limits on question and answers during question period. And that is in response to now having a fourth party in the legislature, which is the BC Conservatives. They gained official party status earlier in September with the defection of Bruce Banman. So now there's a two-man show with John Rustad and Bruce Banman in the BC Conservatives. So they need to have questions, and that's going to take away time from BC United. And so the speaker's trying to find a way to make it more equitable, get everyone in. So we have the 45-second time limit. That is done in the House of Commons in Ottawa. So he's testing it out basically this week. The speaker said he's not going to cut anyone off, but he expects people to just play by the rules. And if next week he sees people are going over, they might institute more of a firm 45-second limit.
What was the limit before?
It was unlimited. So before, and that was sort of the problem, is that it would allow either the government to, wax poetic on its entire legislative agenda or all of its policies that it's done and not really answer the specific question. It would allow the opposition parties to get in as many digs as they want if there was heckling. So, maybe it will be a bit more of there'd be more decorum, one would expect. If you have a shorter time limit, maybe there won't be as much desk banging and heckling back and forth, which is kind of time wasted. It's not actually answering the question. So maybe it will be improved, or maybe the public will say, oh, that's boring. I kind of like the desk banging.
Well, so from the government side, the positive is, of course, that they can restrict the length of the questions, but the downside for them is they don't have as much time to lag the puck, if you will, and drag things out and run the topic,
get as much of their government spin out there, but at the same time that perhaps the opposition parties will only have 45 seconds to get their retort and their follow-up question in. So obviously partisan politics is still going to be a factor, but a little bit more disciplined.
Right. Okay. So then when we get down to the business of governing and policy, what does the NDP have on its agenda this year when it comes to housing? Because I know you wrote about that. There's a number of different pieces to deal with affordability.
Yeah, I think the housing legislation will be the most interesting. There was a lot of government announcements back in April about Airbnb toughening up on Airbnbs, housing to support, legislation to support the upzoning, which is allowing multi-family homes on a single-family lot. These were all announcements that came with no legislation to support them. That was a criticism at the time. Well, okay, you're announcing these things, but where's the legislation? So this session, we're going to get that legislation on upzoning, on Airbnbs, secondary suites. There will be a law that makes all secondary suites legal in all communities. A lot of municipalities have already legalized secondary suites, but there's some that haven't. So we're going to see a lot of legislation that basically forces municipalities to do things to approve more housing. A lot of municipalities will say, well, we're already working as fast as we can, but the government will say, well, there's some that aren't, and they need the pressure. So again, some municipalities aren't happy about that. They think they should have final say on land use regulations, but the government says, well, not all of them can be, not all of them are doing that. So we need to give them a push.
Okay. It's going to be a challenge for the NDP, of course, because rental prices and real estate prices have continued to soar under the NDP, no matter what they've tried. And now they've only got a year before the next election. So can these policies really have a significant impact where it really matters to people in terms of the price that they're paying?
I think that's a great question. It's a question of how much can legislation impact the free market, right? So There is also criticism, for example, of the upzoning legislation. Sure, you can have more units on one particular lot, but there's concerns that now that lot becomes more valuable because any single family lot is going to be scooped up by a developer because they know they can build 6 units. So that's a debate that people are having is, to what extent is the legislation actually going to bring down prices? And I think it's a big question mark. Again, if the new housing targets that were announced last week, it included, that's for municipalities, it did include a number of below market units that municipalities must approve. So the government might say, well, we are legislating the amount of below market units that must be introduced into the market to ensure that middle income people, lower income people have a place to live. So
right.
that
But you say you still have to find somebody who can afford to build them. So that's
exactly.
the piece that
And
is
that's
still
where
missing.
the factor of
Right.
interest rates comes into play. Like builders might say, okay, sure, you might want us to build below market housing, but with the cost of materials, the labor shortage, and interest rates, how do we do that? And again, that's where the federal government and the province need to step in. They need to subsidize those below market rentals. But so far, we've not seen that action from the federal government. The Housing Accelerator Fund, which is supposed to fund municipalities for below market rentals, has been really slow to roll out. It was in the 2022 budget, and only one community in London, Ontario, has actually received the funding since it's been announced. And we saw that controversy last week as well with Burnaby and Surrey. They were supposed to get their funding, but the federal housing minister canceled the announcement because he was concerned about the development cost increases. So, a little bit of chess going on there in terms of the federal government holding back its funding because they were concerned about development fees rising. So again, we need 3 levels of government to cooperate, and so far we're not really seeing that.
Okay. And so aside from housing, which will be a big one, as you've just described, what else do you expect if the government has its way? What else do you think will dominate the agenda this session?
We're also supposed to see reforms to the Police Act. That's to improve oversight of police departments. That was a recommendation from the Police Act committee that I think it was almost 2 years now that it came out with its recommendations. We really haven't seen a lot of movement on some of those recommendations, but that is to, again, increase oversight of police agencies, address some of the concern of institutional racism, institutional discrimination that some groups have complained about among police departments. So we'll have to see how that oversight plays out, because again, we do have the Special Investigations Unit, we have the Independent Investigations Office, which investigates police, and we also have the Office of the Police Complaint Commissioner that investigates misconduct. So not criminal matters, but so we'll have to see how the oversight tacks on to those existing structures. But I also think a big question will be the future of the RCMP in BC, because the province is waiting for the federal government to decide, is the RCMP going to continue contract policing in small communities? And BC has been open to perhaps considering a provincial police force if the RCMP is not going to continue its contract. So, I mean, the RCMP has said they want to continue contract policing, but that's a question, again, for the federal government. So a lot of these questions that are up in the air depend on the federal government making a decision on contract policing.
That's interesting. Policing, you mentioned that. We haven't heard anything from Jessica McDonald, who was appointed by the province to sort things out in Surrey with the transition to the Surrey Police. Are you expecting any more? When are we expecting some news there?
We are. Oh, there's Les Lane, my
Yep.
rival from the Times Colonist, trying to poke in. Well, that's another good question. I mean, we haven't really heard a lot of the what's going on with the transition. So I don't know if that's a good thing. If we're not hearing anything, that means everyone's getting along, or if that means that we're still at a stalemate. So that's another thing that we'll be looking at. Is I mean, the Premier has said he expects this transition to chug along over the next few years. And so again, I'm not really maybe not hearing anything means that everyone's doing what they're supposed to. But yeah, it's a big. I mean, we obviously heard about allegations of jurisdictional squabbles between Surrey Police and Surrey RCMP during the shooting at the Gurdwara involving the
Yes.
Sikh leader. And so again, the RCMP said nope, that didn't happen, but we still hear some rumbles of jurisdictional squabbles. So yeah, we'll have to see how the Surrey Police Department, whether they are being allowed to ramp up their ranks as was supposed to happen.
Right. Well, seeing your colleagues, Les and others heading out the door, I guess you've got to get to some scrums before the session gets going. Yeah. All right, Katie. So best of luck this week. Thanks, and we'll chat again next week.
Thanks, Harold. Nice to chat. And this is the kind of spiced up press gallery. That some of the pictures came down. We were doing some painting, but now everything's back up and it's looking a bit more back to its chaotic self. So that's why I wanted to show the press gallery today.
Yeah, you'll have to give us a tour one time. All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Harold.
Bye-bye.
Bye.